Okay, and happy Thursday, Year 9. So we're going to go straight into our mastery review, the in silence and on your own activities. So no discussing with your neighbor or somebody in the room. But number one, okay, the grinding train creates an image of A, work as powerful, oppressive, and capable of wearing you down, or B, a steady, continual drumbeat that is a part of you. So you have to choose for one, A or B. Number two, true or false? All poems will use a first person voice. Is that true or false? Number three, which pronoun is the odd one out? They, she, it, he, someone, I, you, theirs. So which pronoun is the odd one out? Number four, in the metaphor, his heart was a cash register. Can you underline the tenor and circle the vehicle? Also think about what the metaphor might suggest that this character, this imaginary he, is like. His heart was a cash register. And five, neither true or false. A theme is a message in one text that must also be found in other texts. So guys, you can pause me there. Again, because it's our starter. If you're still doing this in 60 minutes time, you've lost your way. If you're still doing this in about 4 minutes, that's probably a healthy amount of time, but some of these are quick answers, A's and B's, true or falses. So I would expect you to spend no longer than 4 minutes in this. Can I just say as well at this point that some of you, one of these questions, I think it's number 5, was based on the responses from the quiz that we had in forms. This was one of the quiz questions in forms that you were asked to do. And we had a grand total of, from my group anyway, about 4 or 5 people participating. So guys, if there's a quiz set on Teams, you must be doing it. Also, can I just say at this point, some really wonderful work being created. I've been really proud of the standard of work, but it's not from everybody. And if you're doing work and submitting it, but you're only doing one part of the activity, so like the starter, but then you don't go on to anything else, I won't be able to mark you as a 1 for having submitted all your work if it's incomplete. So just be careful and be mindful that as you're working through these lessons to set yourself a good standard that you need to do all tasks to the best of your ability for a 1, most of the tasks across a week for a 2. Okay, my darlings, so we'll pause, give you a chance to do it, and then we'll go through the answers together. Okay, so I'm smiling because you might or might not hear it. I don't know how good the speaker is, but my neighbours decided to do some at-home DIY today, so I can hear drills and all sorts. So hopefully it won't be too distracting for you, okay? So let's have a little look at the answers. Number 1, the grinding train creates an image of work as powerful, oppressive, and capable of wearing you down. Now, why is it A and not B? Because we did look at the idea yesterday that one of the themes is that work in this poem is being presented as a steady, continual drumbeat that's part of you. But that comes through the element of the metaphor, the rhythmic pain, the grinding train. That word grinding means to wear down, to be oppressive. So we would say 1A is the correct answer. Okay, 2, it's false. Poems can use a first-person voice, and we began to look at that yesterday, that this is a poem with a first-person voice. Our poet is using the words me and I, but actually poems can also use third person or second person. It doesn't always have to be a first-person voice. Okay, 3, which was the odd one out? Now, this really goes back to the idea of first-person voice in number 2. I is the odd one out because that is the only one that's first person. The others are all third or second person. Okay, so it's the only one there that's a first person pronoun. They is third person. She, it, he, someone are also third person. You is second person. So the odd one out there is the I because it's the only one that's first person. Okay, so in the metaphor, his heart was a cash register. So the tenor, okay, the idea being described there is somebody's heart. And there's this powerful metaphor that uses the vehicle of a cash register. So what kind of impression does that create for a character if his heart was a cash register? So to get it right, it had to be heart for the tenor, cash register for the vehicle, but your ideas for the suggestions could be quite open. I'm immediately beginning to get the impression of somebody really materialistic. All they love is money and making money. This could be a good way in year 10 that you might think about the character of Ebenezer Scrooge when we're first introduced to him in A Christmas Carol. He's very materialistic and greedy. His love was money. His heart was a cash register. Beautiful. And finally, for number 5, okay, guys, we are looking at a true moment. A theme is the message in one text that must also be found in other texts. So far, we've been looking at the theme, really unpacking the theme. Sorry, my dog's just jumped up behind me. I've got a neighbor in a drill and a dog that's quite needy. So a theme is the message in one text, but it must be found in others. So in other words, that idea of the meta-narrative, that this text is contributing to a bigger story, a bigger discussion about work and the impact of work on people. Brilliant. Now we're going to go straight into our lesson today. We are really unpacking and ruminating on this poem, okay? And we are moving towards the end though. This poem is going to be done and dusted so that we can move on to a second poem to see if the same theme or how the same theme is being presented. So we were looking at the resolution, the ending, not necessarily the physical ending of the poem, i.e. the very last line, but what solutions? How is this poem settling or dealing with the problem of work? And we identified yesterday that it's got 4 moments potentially of solution that we were looking at. And we were using language. How has the writer used language? We were doing work yesterday on different ways that language can be used to make us understand or to focus us on the conflict and its resolution. So we looked yesterday at pronouns. Now, pronouns are a lovely way to start. They aren't just used in poetry. They're used across all texts. But in this poem, we could say that the importance of theme is that this poem is very much an individual lamenting. That's a beautiful word, when you complain and cry out about something terrible that's happening. And he is lamenting his life because there is nothing in it except for work and sleep. So at this point, guys, I'd really like you to make sure that you've got your pen, your paper, that you're ready to really focus in on the learning for today. And we're going to see a little bit of a repetitive process. We're going to focus in on a generic language device, and then we're going to see it applied to the poem. Okay? So we're going to be looking at this idea of how language or how poems work. And we're going to focus on something new today. So the speaker in this poem uses different sentence functions to show the change in their voice and emotional state. So we're going to do a revision about 4 sentence functions, the 4 jobs that sentences can do. Okay, now I'm going to talk you through, and then I'm just going to ask you to add to your notes, okay, a note, a reference point for yourself moving forward for what the 4 sentence functions are. What are the 4 jobs that sentences can do? Okay, number 1, statements. Okay, now this is the highest occurring sentence function out there, the most frequent. So in all the texts you read that you encounter today, the majority of writers, so if you're reading a textbook from maths, if you're reading something in science or in RE, you will encounter this, or this sentence is doing this job. Sentences have the job of offering description, information, and explanation, and we call them statements. Now, a statement will always end in a full stop. So one of the ways to identify sentence functions is to look at the punctuation. So all I want you to do is to write down the purple statement, okay? So statements end in a full stop. If you are a quicker writer and you don't get stressed, you can make the note that's offering description, information, and explanation. It's the most common, the highest frequency sentence function, okay? Number 2, I'll let you pause once I've gone through the 4, okay, are commands. Now, commands also end in a full stop, but, now this is really important, begin with a verb. Okay, so commands end in a full stop, so they're the same as statements. Both statements and commands end in full stops, but they will begin with a verb, a doing word. And they do this because commands are all about creating authority and kind of like a voice of control. They provide their instruction, advice, direction. So if you're reading a recipe, you will see a series of commands because it'll be giving you instructions. Yep. Take 2 eggs. Beat the mix together. They offer advice sometimes, so commands can be used to offer advice. Get to bed on time. Set yourself routines. So it's not always that commands have to be this angry, kind of controlling voice in a negative sense. Sometimes commands are about creating a sense of authority. I know what I'm talking about. They can be used to determine a state of instructions, advice, and direction. So commands. So if we just pause in a minute, and we're just going to write down the purple, that commands end in full stop, but begin with a verb. So you need the red element too. Okay. Now there's only 4, so we've got 2 more to go. Exclamations. Now exclamations are visually really easy to spot because you look for an exclamation mark. So exclamations is the 3rd job that sentences can do. Okay, now we used to old school think exclamations were all about one emotion and one emotion only. Yeah, we went to the emotional bank with exclamations of anger. You know, if somebody is writing dialogue, if there's a moment in a story and you've got dialogue and somebody's angry, we would use an exclamation mark. But that's a little bit narrow. Really, exclamation marks do show a change in tone or voice, but it's about any heightened emotion. It could be about fear, anxiety, excitement, celebration. So exclamation marks can denote and be used to show heightened emotion. Okay, so an emotional response. And it sometimes can be bigger than anger. They can also be used for what we call emphatic stress. Like that, yep. So really stressing the importance of an idea or information that's being given. So they create stress and heightened emotion. Now, the 4th one are questions. Now, these also are a real visual clue. If it hasn't got a question mark, it's not functioning as a question. So questions end in question marks. Now, they can be, this is multifaceted and we're just introducing these today, but there are what we call direct questions and indirect questions, open questions, closed questions. So it's a very big area really, and writers use them and manipulate questions in different ways. But for us today, we just want to make a note that questions end in question marks, and it's all about inviting a response to get you, the reader, thinking, to challenge you, to create a conversation, a dialogue between the reader and the writer. Now, we know when we're reading, pretty much right now, I am using questions all through these online lessons, not because I can really hear you, but it's creating that what we call synthetic, that sense of a relationship, even though it's a little bit limited. There's an invitation to respond. I'm trying to create a conversation to get you thinking and challenge you to get involved. So we're going to see how these sentence functions focus us points of language that do help us work out how this poem ends. So they are very deliberately used by our writer, but I don't want to do that yet. What I want to do is give you a minute, press pause. Now, guys, I don't need to copy all of this down. And if you're printing the sheets off, because you can, again, I want you to make sure they're in a safe place because we will come back to these in future poems. But I don't want you to write all of this down. It will be enough today to say 1 to 4, statement, command, exclamation, question, end in question marks, end in exclamation, end in full stop, end in full stop. The only one you might need a little bit extra with is the command, because it has to begin with a verb. Okay, so here's a command. Pause the screen. Write down the 4 statements. Off you go. Okay, guys, so hopefully you had enough time, or you gave yourself enough time to do that. So we're now going to see this in practice. So look at my question. What sentence function is being used? And we're going to look across the poem from yesterday. You're going to see the table that we saw yesterday. And by the end of the work we're going to do together, we're going to be able to write a response. Okay, we're going to be able to complete these sentence stems down here. To do that, we're going to use the table. Now, I did say yesterday, so I want to make this clear today, okay, guys? I've just organized it visually into this table format, but you do not need to copy and complete these tables as we go in every time. Okay, so I've just highlighted here that I've now numbered each line from the poem as a 1, 2, 3, and 4. So when we're doing the answers in a minute, you only need to write down in your book number 1 and then the answer, number 2 and then the answer. Okay, so that you're not copying and completing this table the whole time. What we did ask you to do yesterday was to copy and complete from yesterday's part of the table these 4 statements. So these are really telling us the 4 resolutions, the 4 endings, and we're exploring how language takes us there today. So, for example, I did want you to write down yesterday, one solution to the problem of work is to be set free from it. Another solution is to be taken away, to escape. The resolution for the speaker is that they are fired. Somebody saves them. The poem ends with a resolution as the speaker is free. So those were the bits I did want you to copy and complete yesterday. But when we come across to this column and it's saying how, which lines use different sentence functions, what can you see statements, commands, questions, or exclamations, I don't want you to copy and complete the whole table. Okay, so let's have a little look together. Look at number 1. Okay, so guys, we're going to look at number 1. We're going to write down in our book just number 1. Oh, free me please with gentle ease. From work, sleep, work. Now look and use your eye. We can immediately see a punctuation mark. So what punctuation mark? It's an exclamation mark. So that means number 1, which sentence function is it using? Brilliant, an exclamation. So all you need to write down in your book is number 1, exclamation. Okay, so let's look at number 2. Just whisk me off to lands afar. Now, I do apologise, guys. Sorry. I can see now in some of them I haven't put the end full stop on. So just whisk me off to lands afar. So imagine that's a full stop. Okay, so you're asking yourself, is that a statement, a command, an exclamation, or a question? Now, as I've said, it's not an exclamation. No exclamation. It's not a question. So then we have to determine, is number 2 a statement or a command? So remember, what do we say a command has to begin with? Brilliant. It has to begin with a verb. So now I'm looking at the beginning and this little word here, just. It's not a doing word. So this is not a verb. So number 2 ends in a full stop, doesn't begin with a verb. So it must be is it a command or a statement? Brilliant. A statement. So you write down number 2, statement. So guys, in number 3, there's 3 you've got to find. Okay, so for number 3, write down the 3 that you can find. And then for number 4, imagining that's a full stop again, sorry. So what is number 4? So press pause. Don't do the writing activity yet. We're going to do that together in a minute. So press pause. Just write down in your books 1, 2, 3, and 4. And what sentence functions you think are being used. Okay, guys, how long did it take you? So let's have a little look together. And there we go. So we agreed. So give yourself a tick if you're right that number 1 is an exclamation. Number 2 is a statement. And did you see the 3 being used in this stanza? But hark, there's our first brilliant exclamation. Second exclamation, you're fired. And then we've got he screams. Sorry, we've got the statement and then the final exclamation. Sorry, so I just got those the wrong way around. So it's 2 exclamations and a statement. Brilliant. Okay, lovely. So let's have a look then at this last one. It ends with an end. It's a full stop. It doesn't begin with a verb. So we're looking at the statement. So guys, we've got exclamations and statements in this poem. So now we're going to turn it into some writing. So it says here in the line, blank, the writer uses the exclamation to show a change in his emotional state. He is becoming. So guys, what exclamation should we look at first? Well, a little clue is here because it does say when the exclamation is used with the speech, you're fired. So we're not looking at the you're fired exclamation, but we could do but hark, or we could do the free me please. So which one should we do? I think it's always good to start at the beginning. So in the line, oh, free me please from work. Now guys, you don't have to write the full line. You can just say in the line, oh, free me, work, exclamation. Okay. The writer uses the exclamation to show a change in his emotional state. He is becoming. So guys, if we've said exclamations show emotion, what do you think he's feeling at this point? Oh, free me, please, with gentle ease. What's he feeling? Now, when somebody says, please do this, please help me, what sort of feeling, what words could we use? Now, again, I'm not writing this because in a minute I'm going to ask you to pause and to do the writing yourself. So we're discussing some ideas, we're thinking together, but you're going to make your final choice. It almost sounds like he's begging, isn't it? He's becoming. So what emotion goes with somebody when they start to beg? We could say he's becoming desperate. So we could say he's becoming desperate. He's becoming, he's becoming stressed and anxious. He wants help. So his emotional state is changing. He's becoming desperate. He's becoming anxious. He really wants somebody to help him. Okay, brilliant. Now, when the exclamation is used, you're fired, it creates the voice of someone who is. Now, guys, a little clue here, because we could link it with that verb choice screams. So when the exclamation is used with the speech, you're fired, it creates the voice of someone who is. So what emotion, what emotional state are they in? Now, guys, I would say I want a better word than angry. I want you to go to your vocabulary banks. I want you to say, could you find me a better synonym than angry? What's this guy feeling? You're fired, he screams. So you're going to press pause and you're going to copy and complete these statements, these sentences at the bottom. Okay. And that's going to help us begin to bring together the idea then that these sentence functions are helping to bring us to the resolution. They're showing that the resolution is desperate. It's linked to the emotion of somebody getting angry with him. Okay, so press pause and I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so we've got another language checkpoint moment, helping us to understand how poems work. So what are we going to look at next? Okay, so any minute now. Okay, so the speaker in the poem uses a particular tense to create the sense of immediacy, and that this event for him is happening in the real time. It's happening now. Now, immediacy comes from the word immediate, that it's happening now. It's happening immediately in front of him. So we're going to have a little recap on verbs and verb tenses. So the first thing we need to know that when we talk about tense and verbs, that every verb has what we call a base form. It has a beginning, which is then changed to show whether the action took place in the past, present, or future. So the first thing is to know is that tenses are all linked to verbs, and that every verb has a base form, a beginning, and we then change the verb from its base form to show whether it was happening in the past, present, or future. Now, a quick disclaimer. There are various ways to show whether events are completed, ongoing, whether we're showing the future is right tomorrow or in 6 years' time. So we know that there are more complex ways of using verbs to show tense, but we're just going to focus today on the simple forms to help us think about the tense in this poem and why it's being used. So this is what we call a base form. So a verb to see. Now, a base form has this little helper, this word to. So although I've chosen to see because it's a verb that's used in the poem, I could have said to dance, to sing, to think, to imagine, to dream, and that's the starting place. So all verbs have a base, a starting place. Yep. And from that starting place, from that base form, we begin to change them to show different things. So we're only focusing on tense today. So I just want you to imagine with me, right now, I can see the screen. Miss Deutsch is seeing the screen. Yesterday, I see the screen does not work. Okay, it does not make sense. So what do we need to change it for? So I just want you to think for the to see, what would you change it to? Yesterday, now I see, tomorrow. So how would you show different tenses? Okay, so let's just see the ways we can do it. Okay, so yesterday I saw. Now, guys, we can see here that this is quite a big change, see to saw. Now, with some verbs, we call them irregular. The changes are quite big, They change a lot to show different tense. Some just add maybe an ed ending or an ing. But yesterday I saw. So right now I see a film. Yesterday I saw a film. Now I see a film. Tomorrow I will see what's on the TV. So with the future tense, we often use what we call helper verbs, modals, to create the future. And this is where I talked about that disclaimer. There's various ways tomorrow. Tomorrow I will see, tomorrow I might see, tomorrow I am going to see. So there are more complicated ways to create tense, but I just want us to get our head round for today that the speaker in the poem is using a particular tense. We're going to see what tense it is, okay? That verbs create tense by changing to show whether the action took place in the past, present, or future. And that all verbs have what we call this base form, this starting platform from which they change. So let's have a look at what we're going to do. So it says here, can you look at the lines and find the verbs and then decide whether they are past, present, or future? Okay, so I've done one for us here. Oh, free me, please, with gentle ease from work, sleep, work, sleep, work. So the verb here is free. Now, is that past, present, or future? So then we say, we can use the yesterday, today, and tomorrow to help us. So if I said, yesterday, I free me. No, it doesn't work, does it? We want to say freed. Yesterday, I was freed. Yesterday, I needed to be freed. So it's not past tense. It's not, oh, I will be free in the future. Present tense. Okay, so we would just write down number 1, free, present tense. Okay, so in number 2, just whisk me off to lands afar. What does he want to be done to him? He wants to be whisked. Okay, so we write down whisk, and you decide, is that past, present, or future? You decide. Okay, now let's have a look at this one. But hark, I see a golden gleam, a saving spirit of hope. You're fired, he screams. Now, in this one, there is, what verb can we see? Good, see. So write down for number 3, see, is it past, present, or future? You're fired, he screams. Now, screams is a verb. Is it in the past, present, or future? Good, you decide. And then, now I am free, released from all this work, sleep. So, what do you think in that one? Okay, so we're going to have a look at turning that into some sentences together. Okay, so really that's us thinking hard. If you've written it down, the notes, the verbs and the tenses, brilliant. But we're going to take that thinking hard and now we're going to write hard. Okay, we're going to turn it into our paragraph. So the speaker mainly uses what tense then? What was the emerging main tense? Brilliant. It's all written as if it's happening now. So he's using the present tense. Brilliant. The speaker mainly uses the present tense, so now I'm free, to create a sense of immediacy. In other words, that the events are happening. Can you remember what we said about immediacy? The events are happening now. Brilliant. This can make the events more powerful. Okay, so we do see that we can get a powerful moment when it feels like it's happening now. It also, we could talk about that it makes it more relevant. We're going to connect to this poem because it's happening now. It's not about a past event that we're removed from. This can make the event seem more powerful. However, the speaker does use the blank tense when they remember that freedom came from when they were. Okay, so can you see, did you find it? Now this verb released is past tense. It's got that ed ending. So however, the speaker does use the past tense. And in this moment, he remembers that he was released from all this work sleep by what event? What event frees him from the trap of work and sleep? Brilliant, when they were fired. However, the speaker does use the past tense when they remember that freedom came when they were fired. It released them. So again, pause. And then that's your sentences. And that, guys, is our work for today. So I do appreciate that we are doing this kind of looking at language together and then asking you to write. So what would I expect? What would your teachers expect from you today? Okay, the starter activity and the 2 paragraphs where we are unpacking language. So the paragraph on tense and the paragraph on having a mental block on tense and on sentence functions. Okay, the notes that you've made in amongst the work to get those paragraphs done are your notes for future lessons. So they are important, they have value. But really, if you're thinking, what do I need to send to my teacher today? We want to see your starter. We want to see your 2 paragraphs. Okay, guys? So come back for our final lesson tomorrow, and we're going to bring this poem to an end. Bye.